Hello. 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 This is better. This is better. Hello. 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 Hello.
Check, check. Okay. Is it better? Clearer? Okay, all right. Now, once again, for the guests that are seated in Girium, can you please join us in Mapusa? It'll be nice. Okay, fair enough. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, as we start this evening, let me tell you that for each one of you that is seated here, we are expecting a whole lot of engagement and interaction. And as this evening is also the day of Basant Panchami, we would like to start this evening by requesting a very special lady in the house to please join us on the stage to present a very special set of saplings to each one of our guests on the stage. I'd like to request the Councillor, Ward number 6, Mapusa Municipality, Dr. Nutan Bicholkar, to please join us on the stage. Check. Dr. Nutan, would you start by presenting the saplings to Dr. Tharoor? Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause would be nice. Dr. Tharoor is a guest in Goa, is a guest in Mapusa this evening. Dr. Nutan, would you also kindly present a set of saplings to Dr. Ramakant Khalap? Ladies and gentlemen, it's Basant Panchami. It is the onset of the spring season. But the question is that what is the kind of spring that we are going to witness in Mapusa this year? And this is what we are going to be talking about. Are we ready for a spring in Mapusa? The gentleman behind this endeavor this evening, who's the host of the evening, it's time for him to extend a welcome address to each one of you. Ladies and gentlemen, the young and rising star of Mapusa, please put your hands up for none other than Advocate Shashank Narvekar.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have with us here a member of parliament, one of my idols, Mr. Shashi Tharoor here. Welcome, sir. We have former Union Minister, Mr. Ramakant Khalap, who is sort of a hero of sorts in Mapusa itself. Welcome, sir. We have Mr. Chandrasekhar Rathod from the AICC, who is present on the dais here. Welcome. Mr. Vijay Bhike, who is present here as well, who is the North Goa District President for the Congress Party. We have also present several other members from the PCC and the District Congress and the block of Mapusa. There was a constant reminder for me in the last 4 or 5 elections that I have witnessed that the focus of the entire category of candidates and those who are asking for votes tend to focus on the areas which are not well developed within the city of Mapusa. I have found it as a professional myself that the entire focus of all the candidates always tends to be in certain areas like Kollim, which are densely populated but do not have the proper infrastructure to live a comfortable life. However, our candidates continue to focus on those areas which are considered often as vote banks. Now, although my personal belief is that regardless of whether migrants come into the city and live here, it is our duty as an administration, regardless of which political party is in power, to provide health, basic standard of living, and improved sanitization for everybody that resides within a city. We have seen over the last 20 odd years that this is something that we have miserably failed in giving our entire population, whether it is the tax-paying citizen or it is the one who is living here in the pretext of being a migrant labor. However, in my attempt to try and divert the attention from those that are living here under the garb of being vote banks for certain parties, I want to put a focus on the fact that we as a young team today want to provide every possible opportunity to the newly passed out, educated professional that comes out of university. We need to provide opportunities for startups. We need to provide sustainable living for everybody. There is a tendency amongst government authorities, especially PWD engineers, that they are civil engineers who are used to concretizing everything. We need to change that idea. There are multiple ways of changing this. Sustainable living does not only mean that we need to reduce the amount of concretization in the city. It also means that we need to increase the green cover in the city. I think as a city over the last 20 years, Mapusa has miserably failed to protect its green cover, whether it is the river Tar, whether it is the influx of migrants which has caused vast portions of Comunidad land being encroached upon. Now, as a body, Comunidad has also somewhere fallen a bit short in persecuting those who are encroaching upon their lands. However, I think as an administration, it should be our endeavor to give protection to those who have been living in those areas for a substantial amount of time by giving them some sort of right within that property. So in conclusion, what I would want to say is, the reason for us to gather here today is to understand what are the needs of the new voter, what are the needs of new young professionals who want a sustainable existence where green cover is maintained, yet we have development. However, that development doesn't come in the way of our existence on this planet. We need to reduce garbage, we need to reduce plastic, we need to understand what are the needs of passing on our current planet onto our next generation. And unless we understand how to do that, we will not be able to move on from this. I have 2 young boys who I want to pass on a planet which is greener, a planet which is cleaner, a planet which is sustainable, and a planet which I'm proud of to say that I did my part so that I could give them a better existence in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Advocate Shashank Narvekar. And from here, from the passion and the zeal of the youth for the vision of Mapusa, it's time to bring in a sane voice of wisdom and reason. It's time for me to invite Advocate Ramakant Khalapji to share his thoughts on sustainable growth of Mapusa.
Shri Shashi Tharoorji, my friends on the dais, Mr. Shashank Narvekar, Vijay BK, Mr. Rathod, and all professionals, intellectuals, and bright persons from Mapusa and around. It's a pleasure to interact with you. Mapusa is a city which is known better than the rest of the cities in our state for various reasons. Culturally, we have been vibrant. Socially, we have been so interactive. This is the financial and commercial capital, in a sense, of at least North Goa. But over the years, it is disheartening to know to what state we have brought or pulled down this beautiful city. And now we are talking about taking it back to those good old days, which make us so proud to call ourselves Mapshakars. Recently, I was told to chair the committee which formed the manifesto of Congress Party for this election. I won't take much time, because we have Mr. Shashi Tharoor here, a man of great erudition, scholarship. He's a diplomat of the national and international level. He's heading a committee of the parliament, which is the Standing Committee for Information Technology, and so many things. He's the author of so many books. I know that you have come to listen to him and talk to him. But I will just recapitulate a few points out of that manifesto which might have relevance to what we intend to do with our township here. And I'll use just those few words which we have mentioned there. The whole purpose of the Congress Party, whole objective of the Congress Party in trying to come to power is to make Goa what we have described as Suramya Goa. Suramya, this word itself tells you that it is going to be a beautiful place. We want to make Goa a really beautiful place, environment friendly, greenery, and all amenities for the children, for the elderly, and so on and so forth. We want to make it a Susanskrit Goa. Problem today is menace of drugs, illegal shanties coming over all over, people trying to take advantage of the situation that is here. And in every other way, casinos have made us the gambling capital of the country. One of the ministers from Delhi came here the other day and said, Goa is the casino capital of the country. I don't know how many of us feel proud about that. So, Susanskrit Goa is what we would like to do. Santulit Goa. Santulit is develop it in such a way that, development doesn't, take place only in secluded places or certain pockets. Suvidya Goa, where education would be available across the board to all our people. We would like to see that education is free, at least up to the degree level. Skill development, and therefore make your children fit to get the jobs. And that should lead us to what we have described as Samruddha Goa. Rich in every sense. Rich, of course, in money, so that everybody has jobs, some sort of employment, source of income. Sushasit Goa. To achieve all this will require a government which will give us good governance. Sushasit. And then finally, the seventh point that we have included there is it should be Swanandi Goa. Happiness index. World talks nowadays in terms of happiness index. If we are able to achieve a high point in that index level, we can be proud to say that we intend to do something for the state of Goa, which will put us on a very high pedestal among the different states in our country. So these 7 points are also applicable to the town of Mapusa. If we can achieve this in Mapusa, we can achieve it the rest of the towns and villages. And Mapusa, as you know, Shashank talked about a river. What a beautiful river that we have here. It's a tributary of the Mandavi River. In 1990, little bit of history I would like to go. I was the Deputy Chief Minister of Goa, and I had constituted a task force for development of Goa, or making Mapusa town as the ideal township in the state of Goa. Then recently I was Minister for IT here, and we invited Dr. Mashelkar. And Dr. Mashelkar, with his help, we created a program for Goa on the IT field. And it was divided into 5 points: e-education, e-governance. Once these 2 things were established, we could go for e-enabled services to provide jobs to all. Then IT habitats and industrial estates providing IT infrastructure. And lastly, the 5th point was internet, communication, and entertainment. We call it ICE. But unfortunately, governments have been changing. And the bad part of the whole governance is that nobody wants to look at what the previous government has done. If it is bad, okay, throw it down the gutter. But if it is good, something of it could be picked up and taken forward. You can give your own label to it, like the present government is doing. A lot of previous things are being taken up and given a new label, and they call it, it's mine or it's ours. So let's not go into that. We have a person of great eminence amongst us. He has been already welcomed. On my own behalf, I would like to welcome him. I didn't have the good fortune of being his colleague in the present Lok Sabha or the previous last two Lok Sabhas. But I have been watching him very closely, reading about him. As an author, he appeals to me and to most of us. And as a speaker, as an orator, one of the best things that people know about him, that if he uses a word, nobody has ever heard of it. It's a train of letters, they call it. And he has earned a beautiful nickname. Shashi, even the pronunciation is difficult. Shashi Tharoorosas. Isn't that correct? That's a beautiful epithet that he has. So thank you, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, for having come to us. This audience is small, but it's a very rich audience, and you will enjoy interacting with them. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Advocate Khalib, sir, for that. And yes, no suspenses for guessing who's coming up next. If this was a reality show, then this is what we call the showstopper of the evening. I would have taken a half-an-hour break. I would have shown you ads of all our sponsors. But thankfully, nothing like that is happening here because all the smart citizens concerned about Mapusa are seated right here. Before I invite Dr. Tharoor to the podium, the gentleman that you've all been waiting to hear, Advocate Ramakant Khalibji said something very nice. He said, as an orator, he appeals to almost all of us. But let me tell you, as a writer, as an orator, he appeals to almost all of us. But to somebody like me, he just appeals, period. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, this is one speaker. Once he comes up on the podium, once he takes over the mic, he's somebody, once he starts articulating his thoughts, once he would begin to speak, you would be forced to open your minds, open your eyes, maybe open your dictionaries, depends. But either ways, one thing that we can promise you is that he is worth every minute on the podium. He needs no introduction, but yet I've got someone very special here today who has taken it upon herself to give a very special introduction to Dr. Shashi Tharoor. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands up for the Mahila Congress Mapusa Block President. A round of applause for the lovely Dr. Pratiksha Kala.
Ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries on the days of the days, a very good evening to all. So all our Mapshikars are eagerly waiting to hear our guest, Honorable Dr. Shashi Tharoor now. He needs no introduction, but as a protocol, let me take this opportunity to introduce to you all Dr. Shashi Tharoor. An author, politician, and former international civil servant, Shashi Tharoor straddles several worlds of experience. Currently, a third-term Lok Sabha MP representing the Thiruvananthapuram constituency and chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Technology. He has previously served as Minister of State for Human Resource Development and Minister of State for External Affairs in the Government of India. During his nearly 3-decade-long prior career at the United Nations, he served as a peacekeeper, refugee worker, and administrator at the highest levels, serving as Under-Secretary General during Kofi Annan's leadership of the organization. Dr. Tharoor is also an award-winning author of works of both fiction as well as non-fiction, with his 16th book due for release in November. That was in 2016, by the way, because I got that from Wikipedia. Shashi Tharoor was a pioneer in using social media as an instrument of political interaction. Till 2013, he was India's most followed politician on Twitter. He was the first Indian to reach 10,000 and then 1 lakh followers on the medium and currently has over 4.2 million followers. Dr. Tharoor is also a recognized authority on India, especially regarding its recent economic transformation and future prospects, globalization, freedom of the press, human rights, literacy, culture, foreign affairs, cricket, and more, and is a compelling and effective speaker. Fluent in English, French, as well as in Malayalam and Hindi. There is so much more to his profile and so many achievements to his credits that we will fall short of time. And like I mentioned earlier, we are all eagerly waiting to hear him out. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting to you the dynamic politician of India, Dr. Shashi Tharoor.
Thank you for that very generous introduction, both of you, for your kind words. Shri Ramakant Khalap, it's a great pleasure to share a stage with such an eminent Goan. Young Shashank has been my companion during the day, and I've learned a lot listening to this articulate young representative of the people here, Councillor. Chandrasekhar ji, welcome again from Karnataka, and good to have you here. As like me, we're discovering this beautiful place and seeing how much we can discover. And Vijay ji, very nice to see you here as well. So, namaskar to all of you, and thank you for coming in such good numbers to listen to this outsider. I'm not an expert on Goa, but I think I know a little bit about some of the policy issues facing the nation. And what we envisage this evening is more of an interactive session. That is, you ask questions or make comments reflecting what's on your mind, and I will do my very best to respond as best I can to all of you and whatever is on your mind. No holds barred, ask anything you like. I'll try and address it as frankly as possible. As far as my general remarks are concerned, it is simply that coming as I do from Kerala, whose capital I represent in Parliament, I'm very struck by some of the wonderful things that our two states have in common. We are both coastal states. Yours is slightly smaller. The fact is, however, that you have 40 MLAs, we have 140, so not that much different. Most important, apart from the natural beauty, the beaches, the seas, the coconut palms swaying in the breeze, and all of that lovely, lovely atmosphere, what we do have in common is that we are a diverse population. We have in both states people worshipping all kinds of faiths and backgrounds because we have historically been open to travel and travelers from other parts of the world. We have been able to receive all sorts of people to make their homes on our shores, to teach their lessons, their values, their faiths, their creeds, and we have learned to accept them and live with them. And today one could argue that perhaps Goa stands out, along with Kerala and a couple of other southern states, amongst the few places in India where the kind of unfortunate growth of prejudice, of bigotry, and I'm sorry to say of increasing political polarization based on that prejudice, Goa so far has remained immune to it, and we must ensure it always does. That's something which struck me as I came here. Otherwise, of course, you have a unique history. 400 odd years of Portuguese rule have left their own mark. Your own culture is distinctive and greatly admired and enjoyed by people, not only from all the other parts of India, but also from abroad. And at the same time, you represent in many ways what a small state can do to improve human development. We in the Congress Party are proud of our record when we had, as you know, government here for 7 years, 2005 to 12, and during those 7 years we managed an average GDP growth rate of 12%, and across the board won various national recognitions for making Goa the best small state in the country, and indeed across the board, whether it was environment protection, at the same time economic growth, at the same time educational progress, at the same time the enshrining of democratic rights for the aspiring people of the state, the Congress had a proud track record. It looks particularly good looking back after the 9 years we have seen of BJP rule since 2012, 10 years almost, where you've seen so many of these things going horribly wrong, where governance has taken a backseat. And I'm not here to talk negatively about others, but their record speaks for itself. On every index that I've just mentioned, from GDP growth to instances, unfortunately notorious instances of corruption, to the great strangulations of the economy, in all of these areas, as well as the incidents that you all know about that I don't need to remind you of, the threats to the environment, the threat to Molam National Park, the extraordinary incompetence we've seen in governance, particularly after the late Mr. Parrikar started falling ill. All of these things have made it very clear, not only that the BJP does not deserve another chance in power, but that the previous experience of Congress rule was so much better than what you have experienced in the last 9.5 years. And for this reason, I would urge you all very simply to give the Congress an opportunity once again to serve you, to serve the people of Goa. Ramakantji gave you a summary of the big themes of the Congress's manifesto, which he had a hand, of course, in devising. I don't need to repeat them, but I do believe that these are ideas that the Congress has both the vision and the experience and capacity to deliver for you if it's brought back to power. And I think what's interesting is that, yes, we lost a number of politicians for the wrong reasons. We became the largest single party after the elections of 2017, and now we find ourselves down to 2 MLAs. There's obviously something wrong with that picture. But that also gives us a clean slate. We are essentially putting forward 38 fresh faces to all of you and 2 sitting MLAs. And from our point of view, that does mean that we are as much capable of bringing a breath of fresh air to Goa's political life as any one of the new parties that are pledging to do exactly that. So as an old party with new faces and new candidates, we seek your votes and we seek your support. I will stop there because, as I said, this is really meant to be an interaction. I would much rather address what's on your minds. So I hand the floor over to you. I don't know if somebody will take a mic around or however, and I will leave you to play the traffic policeman and choose who gets the mic to ask a question.
Well, thank you so much, sir. And everyone, what a beautiful point across. I mean, all the fresh candidates coming your way, please put your hands up. I think Congress this time round is literally redefining the old idiom that old wine in new bottle. This time, the bottle remains old, but it seems like the wine is going to be all new. So everyone, having said that, it's time for some questions. Open house. So all you need to do is raise your hand up in the air, and we shall be sending a mic across to you. We do have a bit of paucity of time. Please keep your questions brief, to the point. We are sending across a mic.
Good evening, sir. The topic here is sustainable smart city and the potential of Mapusa. With regard to this topic, I would like to know, first of all, the Modi government declared smart city project throughout the country. We all know that it is utter failure. Here in Goa, we know it because Panji city itself was one of the 100 smart cities that were declared. And if Panji is smart today, we don't know what smartness is. So first of all, we would like to know what exactly is a smart city and how Goa or our small city can become smart.
Thank you. Yeah, shall I stay seated? No, it's all right. They've taken the trouble to stand up. I should reciprocate. You know, it's very interesting. I mean, I don't think Mr. Modi can define what a smart city is. Just as he has not been able to deliver Achhe Din for 9 years, 8 years. And frankly, I was saying in reaction to our finance minister's statement in Parliament that the mirage of Achhe Din, which they have not been able to deliver for 8 years, they've now conveniently pushed for further 25 years. Amrit Kal, they said, Achhe Din after 25 years. Similarly, smart city will only become smart sometime after Mr. Modi is gone, sometime in the 21st century, it seems. That's their long-term thinking. Let's be very honest. A smart city, logically, ought to be one that takes advantage of the latest developments in information technology, artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, in order to make the life of the citizens better. That's, in international terms, if you say smart city abroad, that's what it means. I was visiting Australia a couple of years ago, and when they speak of smart city, they have, for example, various electronic gizmos on their streets, on the top of the street lights, or what used to be the street lights, because those now have triple functions. They turn on the lights automatically when it turns dark, they turn it off when it gets light. They also have a remote-controlled closed-circuit televisions to look for traffic offenses. They also, in some cases, double as traffic lights also. They can be street lamps to illuminate a particular area. All sorts of functions in one particular pole, just sticking there. And they generate Wi-Fi as well for the neighborhood. Now, that kind of smart city is not what Mr. Modi is offering us. He's offering us some fairly basic urban improvements that over time every government has brought some urban development, whether it's better sewage, better roads, better junctions, whatever it may be, and he's calling them all a smart city. Having said that, we in the Congress Party are not particularly interested in the smart city concept the way it has been brought out so far. And everything that I hear about the attempts in Panaji seem to be extremely worrying, because there is a lot of unaccounted money. No one seems to have any clue where the money allotted to the capital of Goa has gone and what has made it smarter, because no one can see any particular smartness there. So the question that comes up to all of us is, can we have a more targeted, specific, measurable set of objectives? And we believe we can. I think Mapusa, for example, is, as you say, a very small town. But you can do some specific things in consultation, of course, with the councillors, the elected representatives of the people, get a sense of where they would like to see concrete specific improvements. And at the same time, e-governance needs to be expanded. I was interested to discover that the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments for local self-governance have not been fully implemented in Goa. And so a lot of the ground level decision making that, for example, in my state of Kerala has gone down to the grassroots, here is still reserved for the state government and the assembly. So I think it will be useful if we can look at some of those things, implement these amendments, and try and make sure that what the people of Mapusa want, and I think Ramakantji and Shashank are better qualified than me to say, on behalf of the people here, what they think should be done, that can be done. I would, for example, try and look at the smart city concept as the Mr. Modi's government has brought, and their so-called Amrit, this Atal mission for urban development, and get the best elements of both, get funding from the center under both heads, but then do something that is more people-centric, that responds to what the people of Mapusa want. And as a state government, out of the resources that the state government has, I'm sure something very concrete can be done. But on the specific details, I would rather leave it to the local experts to add there. Would you like to add a word?
So in respect of smart city, as far as Mapusa is concerned, one of the things that me, Ms. Nutan, some of the other councillors, and we all of us realized over time, that the Mapusa being a hilly region and low-lying areas being there, due to massive concretization, for simple example, in everybody's front yard, instead of a garden, there are paver tiles. People are eliminating the aspect of having even a lawn in front of their house. What happens with this is, as soon as there is rain, there's no percolation of water into the ground. It basically just, when I meant earlier about concretization, I meant the water just flows down to the low-lying areas. Today we have a situation where the low-lying areas are practically full the entire year, even when it's not the rainy season. So when I speak about sustainable smart city, for me, it is important that we increase awareness about the fact that we need to let the earth breathe. So a simple thing that I was suggesting with my fellow councillors is that when we ask for projects to come in for laying, for example, the drain lines, at the interval of every 50 meters or 100 meters, let there be an open pit, which is open to earth, so that there is percolation of water inside. This helps. What is happening is if you see the St. Xavier's area, the whole entire hill has now been concretized. The plants there, they are not able to grow on their own. You have to water them. It's because water is not percolating down. The water table is low. And what happens in the low-lying areas, the water table has gone so high, everything rots. There has to be a balance between both these areas. So there are certain eco-friendly measures, simple things which everybody can use at home. And I'm hoping that we as councillors can do something about that. And that is why we require our candidate Sudhir to get elected in Mapusa. He's been supportive of all these ideas. We're trying to push for that. And awareness has to be created amongst everybody that sustainability is the only way to go forward. Otherwise, we are going to be destroying our planet.
Great. Next question.
Good evening, sir. Along with Mapusa to be a smart city, I would like it to be an elegant city too. And for Mapusa to be sustainable, smart and elegant city, what would be the requirement for infrastructure development and infrastructural technology that would be required here?
Yeah, I'm sorry, there's a bit of an echo in the room. You said you'd like it to be a smart and elegant.
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 Elegant too, because as Advocate Ramakant Khalap sir mentioned, something about the shanties which are mushrooming up at practically every place. The comunidad places are being occupied by those shanties.
I understand your concern, and that's something certainly that I think needs to be done as well. In fact, there's one additional aspect of elegance I'd like to talk about briefly, because this is a city with a lot of people in the cultural world, is the Congress Party actually is committed to strengthening culture in every part of the state. And you can imagine in Mapusa, if you had your own Ravindra Bhavan here, if on top of that there is a film city devoted to actually bringing the film industry to Goa, creating more work, cinema, art, and so on, and providing a state-supported platform and venue for artists and cultural performers. That could be, for example, something that would add to the elegance of Mapusa.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Just now I was listening from Advocate Srinivas. He mentioned something about Modi's smart city. I think it's merely a eyewash. Maybe illusionary things, which is difficult, because what I feel is almost for last 65 years, Goa has been liberated. And till today, we have to struggle for tap water. It is said, it's not said, but it's a fact. It's a fact that in Goa, we get a bountiful rainfall.
Yeah.
And the environmentalists say that the rainfall that we get in a year, if it is properly utilized, is sufficient for 3 years. If we don't get rainfall for 3 years, we can survive because we get sufficient rainfall, more than sufficient rainfall. Advocate Sashank said that Goa is a hilly region, right? Everybody agrees with that. But the thing is that water, the rainwater, which comes down, is going to stormy gutters, rushes to the nalas, rushes to the rivulets, and goes back to the sea. Now, for last so many years, even after liberation, we have our own government formed by the people of Goa, elected people of Goa. Until today, they have not given a serious thought to this. As you said, state of Kerala, 24 hours they get water supply. Whereas we, restricted water supply maybe for 2 hours, maybe for 3 hours, and so on. People have to slog from the month of January onwards for water. So I would like to suggest to the concerned that they should think seriously if we want to go for sustainable, balanced, smart cities balanced cities, balanced development, then we need to work hard. And my suggestion for this is, now we have in the state of Goa one dam at Salaulim, South Goa, and another dam at Anjune, and there are two small dams. They're not sufficient. So if the state of Goa and the Goa government plans a smaller dams at every taluka level, if possible, even at constituency level, MLA constituency level, I think that will be a really a beautiful idea, and that can help in case of sustainable smart cities.
Thank you very much. I think you've really given it some thought. Given the abundant rainfall in Goa, you are a prime candidate for what's called rainwater harvesting. But rainwater harvesting can be done in many ways. Your solution is certainly an admirable one, which has worked in some parts of Maharashtra. That is small check dams to be created in, as you say, every taluka or at least every MLA constituency. And in those check dams, you would essentially have de facto water reservoirs. You would be creating a water body that will then give you water from rain, which can be served, which can be used by people during the drier months. The same logic would apply, of course, to big dams, but big dams have rightly gone out of fashion because they're environmentally more negative than positive. But check dams, small, that's certainly possible. Every home could by law be required to do rainwater harvesting. And certainly public facilities, government buildings, railway stations, all of these. It's a mystery to me why they ignore with impunity even the existing laws on rainwater harvesting. And I think we should be certainly more efficient about implementing these in order to ensure that water is saved. Water is incredibly precious. Thank you for the kind certificate to Kerala, but it's not entirely deserved because we also have some problems, particularly because groundwater near the coastal areas is not safe to drink. There's naturally occurring arsenic in the water. And therefore, we too have had some serious water issues. And we are now collecting rainwater in certain dams and then pumping them. It's a long and complicated saga. But the fact is that we are very, very happy that you've thought about this. And I'm sure that my colleagues in the Congress party will want to take this forward. Should the voters bring us back to government, this is something we should definitely implement very, very urgently. Thank you.
Let's welcome the South Goa District President, Mr. Joe Dice.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, Shashi, sir. Good
Yes,
evening,
hi.
Ramakan, sir. All those present on the stage. First of all, I am a student currently pursuing my Bachelor's of Science in Physics and Mathematics in Goa itself. And so I would like to say it is a dream come true for me to be standing in front of you in person and to be speaking to you because I'm a huge fan, not just because you're a parliamentarian, but also because I've read a number of books of yours, including Paradoxical Prime Minister, by the way, which I loved a lot. So first of all, it is a dream come true for me, and thank you so much for being here. So
It's very kind. Thank you.
So my question is not specifically with regards to Goa, but about India as a whole, and therefore in turn about Goa too. So as a student, my concern is, what is it that the Indian education system currently is lacking, as a result of which we are not able to produce quality and skilled working professionals? Because one of the reasons why there is large-scale unemployment in our country today, and in Goa as well, is because many of the graduates are not deemed fit to be employable by any corporate or any company. So that's my first question to you, sir. So second question to you of mine is, the other day, Honorable Member of Parliament, Shri Rahul Gandhi, gave a beautiful speech in the Lok Sabha. And in that speech, he said that there is a need for us to protect the cultural identity of each and every state. However, for small states like Goa, unfortunately, due to the large-scale migration of people from other states, especially the big ones and the overpopulated ones, there is a fear among the Goans that we are losing our cultural identity. How do we resolve this problem without being racist, without being discriminatory, and without, in a way, without violating the fundamental right of every Indian citizen? So these are my two questions to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. They're both excellent questions, and thank you again for your kind words with which you began. Let me say that on the first one, you've identified a problem that is truly nationwide and not just for Goa. We are seeing a situation in which surveys conducted by the major employer organizations, FICCI, CII, ASSOCHAM, have all concluded that as high as 82% of the graduates applying for jobs are deemed by employers to be unsuitable for employment. And this is a startling figure. It's the solution that some of the very big companies have been able to find, particularly Tata's Infosys. What they've done is they've essentially set up remedial university campuses to train the people they hire. And I don't mean on-the-job training. They're actually hiring graduates and educating them for one more year, almost in a university campus-like setting. I've been to the Infosys campus in Mysore, and it looks like an American college. I mean, literally the way the place is laid out. And what they're doing is they're giving people coursework, teaching them what they should have known by the time they got into a working environment. And that, it seems to me, points to the first problem, which is that the universities themselves and the engineering institutions, except for the very top ones, the IITs and so on, they're fine. But these are islands of excellence in a general sea of mediocrity. And these universities, they really need to be told what they need to produce in terms of quality output and learning outcomes if their graduates are to be useful in the world economy of today. The second thing that when I was very briefly in government for a year and a half in the HRD ministry as it then was, the education ministry as it is now, what I have sought to do is to try and promote greater interaction between academia and industry. That is, it was very much my conviction and that of my government that we need to encourage more connection between the ivory tower and the real world. And the real world really matters. For example, when we authorized polytechnics to be set up, we said we will not give a license to set up a polytechnic unless you have established a relationship with an industry which is within a 30-kilometer distance from your polytechnic. And why is that? Because a polytechnic is meant to train somebody to work in the real world, but if the techniques they are learning are grossly out of date, or they're coming out of an old textbook and have no relation to what modern industry is actually doing in today's world, then they're useless, and the students who come out of these institutions are equally useless. And that's why we feel it's vital there should be a contemporary connection. We got Mr. Narayan Murthy, the founder of Infosys, to do a study for the UPA government. It was called Academia Industry Interface. But unfortunately, as you know, we lost power soon after, and the report merely gathered dust in the BJP government's shelves. I believe we should do more of that. One of the examples I often used to give is what I've seen in America, which is that if Mr. P.V. Mohan is here, our secretary from AICC, come and join us. Come, Mohanji. Come. I'm sorry, I've been presented a plant, so you're going to compete with that for legroom. So what the Americans do very often is if an industry has, for example, an idea for a new product, a new innovation, they will go to a university nearby and they'll say, do you have any graduate students or doctoral students who can research this particular idea? We don't want to hire staff and start expanding our company until we know whether this works. But you have them already. We'll give you the seed money. You can give them research fellowships and stipends and whatever they need to do the research. And if at the end of the day they actually prove that there's a viable concept and the product can be made, we will make it and we will give you a share of the royalties in order for you to be able to go ahead and actually get some credit for having helped us with this innovation. It's a terrific thing, and the entire Silicon Valley began that way with the universities there. There's this Raleigh-Durham triangle in North Carolina, which has functioned exactly that way. In India, we don't do this. In fact, it would be considered shocking if a university were to allow a company and industry to come in and give some money to it and use its students to do some research for the company. It would not be considered appropriate or even permitted under our country's ethos. We need to change that kind of thinking. So that's on the first question. I think the only way we'll make a satisfactory answer is by making the academic environment far more effectively focused on the expectations of employers in the real world. That's my first point. Your second question, if I remember correctly, was on migrants coming in and changing the cultural ethos. And I know this has become a politically controversial issue here. I think your revolutionary Goan party, so-called, has also been making an issue of it. I have a slightly different take on this because, you know, in Kerala also we have a lot of migrants. And what's particularly striking in Kerala is that we are principally known as an exporter of skilled and educated labor. They go all over India. Wherever you go, you find Keralites working. And of course, in places like the Gulf, the largest single Indian population amongst the expatriates, the largest single one would be from Kerala, right across the Gulf countries. So why is it that we import labor? Because these fellows go out and work abroad, but there aren't any people to do the sort of nuts and bolts work in the state, whether it's construction labor, whether it's some of the, to put it bluntly, sort of toiling class, working class professions. The handyman in the building I live in Trivandrum is from Bihar, and so on. But the answer to that dilemma has not been to resent their presence, but rather the answer has lain in assimilation. So these people come from Bihar and Bengal and Orissa, and they find that they're in the midst of a culture that is no hostility to them. They embraces them, welcomes them, but expects them to learn the local language, to learn the local customs, to learn the local tastes, and to learn the local attire. And they do so. So maybe they'll speak Hindi or Urdu at home, or Bangla or Odia, but on the streets, they're no different from any other Keralite. And one of the most remarkable things was 2 years ago, I received a visit from a young man who had come first in the whole state in the school leaving examinations in Malayalam. First in the whole state. His name was, if I remember correctly, Muhammad Murshid or Muhammad, something like that, with an M. And this boy was the son of a Bihari chaiwala who had come from Bihar, set up a tea stall outside the station. This boy had gone to a local government school, learned everything in Malayalam, was an ace in it, and he is a Bihari technically, as far as we're concerned. So assimilation will be the answer to your question. I personally am against all this resentment, sons of the soil business. I was a small child in Bombay when there was this movement against South Indians and defacing of South Indian signs and shops and so on. And I believe that our constitution in India grants everybody, every Indian citizen, the right to work and live and practice their profession anywhere in the country. I would want to defend that principle. So I'm not in favor of too much of the sons of the soil. You may have heard that Haryana did what the revolutionary Goans want to do. They passed a law obliging every company to have 75% of their staff from local residents. Now, today's newspaper will tell you that law has been stayed by the High Court as unconstitutional. So I think we should respect the Constitution, encourage Indians to come to Goa, but make sure that they, if they're playing on your field, they play by your rules. That's the assimilation answer.
Sir, what you said just now, I also agree with you regarding the constitutional laws. But there is a need of, I think, some reservation for the sons of the soil.
I would leave it to Goans to discuss this amongst themselves and sort it out. I gave you a personal view. Our party has not taken a view on the matter. But as I do want to tell you that there is a constitutional position, and that constitutional position will also have to be respected. So if you do any such reservation, be prepared for somebody to go to court and be prepared for what the Bombay High Court will tell you is feasible or not feasible. So that also should be respected, that there is a constitutional provision. That's the main thought.
All right, so we have
Any other
one
question?
final question.
There are 2 or 3 hands up here on this side. And there's a lady here. Yes, let's have the lady's question first.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Mapusa being one of the main centers and being a base for tourism, we have close proximity to many beaches this side. Besides making it sustainable and smarter, how do we see it enhancing to tourism industry?
Well, I talked about the culture aspects, because, tourism is not only beaches and golden sands and so on, right? I mean, I think people come for various reasons. In fact, historically, people came to Mapusa for trade. So people coming, why do we want tourism? We want tourism because we want infusions into our local economy of resources that were not generated locally. That's the entire economic logic of tourism. That people come from outside, they spend their money, that boosts the well-being of the local residents. That's the whole logic of tourism. Now, that kind of logic does not require only conventional tourism. That's why I talked about, for example, the cultural aspects. If you were to have a Rabindra Bhavan, if you were to have access to a film city, if you were to have state-supported studios for your artists, you have a long tradition of pottery here, maybe turn that into not just useful pottery, but also pottery that can be sold in art galleries. There are ways in which a place can take on these. I'm reminded, for example, there's a little place, not much larger than Mapusa, in the island of Bali called Ubud. And Ubud had nothing going for it. There was very little by way of any significant agricultural output or anything like that. It converted itself into an artist's village. And literally every second house, there was an artist, an art gallery, painting, whatever. And the result turned out to be that you ended up with an incredibly successful, prosperous, and today much visited place that tourists come to see some of the best of Balinese art, to purchase some, and just to see the art galleries. So it doesn't have to be only beaches and tourism, but I think attract people, because people will come to Goa anyway. You can actually have people coming to other parts of Goa for beaches and then traveling up to Mapusa for what you have to offer. So I hope that you will find creative ways of expressing the quality of the local ethos. And certainly talk about a little bit of publicity, the Bogdeshwara temple, the churches. I mean, there's just so much that people can come and see and discover. I was fascinated to read about not just Bogdeshwara, but the Our Lady of Miracles. Because I was very struck by the fact that this was on the site of an old Hindu temple, that a church came up, and that today the Hindus consider the site to be sacred, the Catholics consider the church to be sacred, and they both worship together. What a wonderful spirit of harmony and ethos here in Mapusa that the rest of India should learn from. This is what we need to see much more of, in my honest view, across the country. And imagine if we could make the annual festival into a publicized, well-known occasion that should attract tourists from all over to come and see people of both faiths celebrating together. What a difference from the atmosphere prevailing in parts of North India today. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. Like many others, in the first instance, I'm elated to seeing you in person and listening to you.
Thanks very much.
Now, this this concept of smart cities appears to be quite strange because it's coming after many long years. Strange in the sense that shouldn't all cities be smart, sir?
I'm sorry. We go ahead.
It's
You
quite
said the
strange.
smart city isn't terribly smart.
Shouldn't all cities in India be smart rather than singling out only a few cities? What happens to the other cities? And the next thing is, you're a much-traveled man the world over. How do they see their cities? Do they have a different concept of smart cities, or all cities smart? And finally, excuse me, is that this taking forward this concept of smart cities, shouldn't the standard of living is important? That has to be raised. Before you can go for smart city, raise that and then go for your smart cities.
So actually the term itself is not universally accepted or universally used. As I explained when the same question came at the beginning of our meeting, it really relates by and large to the use of modern information technology, e-governance principles and so on. That's essentially what smart cities are supposed to be all about internationally. And I gave examples of that in answering another gentleman's question earlier. But you're totally correct that it's the quality of people's lives that should matter. And if you're able to create, through the use of information technology and other techniques, a better life for the people, then obviously you have a place that you can call a smart city. But honestly, there's no reason why there should be a limited list of those. Every city should have those facilities. For example, let's take a simple matter like computerization of land records, which Bangalore is doing. They began doing it before smart city concept was even invented, but it's a smart thing to do. If everything is computerized, a record is maintained, taxes are levied on the basis of indisputable facts, there can't be too much fudging, there can't be too much corruption. It's a good thing. So it's a question of using technology for better governance in order to improve the lives of the people. And that's where I would certainly agree with you. And it should be not limited to the 99 or 100 cities that the BJP has picked. Every Indian city and town should have at least a modicum of these facilities at a certain level, a certain standard that makes life decent for people. And that unevenness of application is a genuine problem.
A very good evening to you, Dr. Tharoor. Even I have two questions, if that is okay with you, time permissible. Okay, so my first question to you would be, what sort of economic gain do we stand to achieve from shifting from normal energy that we use today, that is a petrochemical-based energy, to something that is something like green energy? Because a state like Goa and the state that you hail from, Kerala, are two states with very long coastlines along India. So we are a big standing point for production of hydroelectric power in the country. So what sort of economic gain would Goa or a state like Kerala have to benefit from shifting to a production of hydro energy? And my second question to you would be a little to build on the academic part of India. That question would be, sir, if there was one major flaw in the Indian education system as compared to the education system abroad, what would it be? Because you have been a part of some of the finest institutions around the world and in India. So what would that one point of difference, one shortcoming be that the Indian students face as compared to students from outside? Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Well, they're both very good, direct, focused questions. On the first question, I would say that green energy is not so much about economics, especially in the initial stages. Green energy was uneconomical, relatively speaking, because it was more expensive than simply burning coal in a thermal plant and polluting the atmosphere. So green energy was more about giving us a decent environment to live in. And therefore, it became a question of we need to do this to save the planet, because if we don't, we'll be destroying lives for future generations. Therefore, we need to turn more green. Since then, there is an economic dimension, because there are the carbon credits and the carbon trading concept, where every country would actually have to have a certain level of targets to meet, and if not, they would find it in their incentive to buy credits from elsewhere. So maybe if India has a total target and Goa is greener than, let's say, Chhattisgarh, then the people of Chhattisgarh, the state of Chhattisgarh, would pay money to go out to buy some of your carbon credits, so it could have an economic benefit, but we are not yet there. It could come to that in due course. The ultimate argument, of course, is that in any case, I don't think there's any debate about this. Green is the way to go. Everyone is talking about this. I was seeing Minister Gadkari on another matter just last week, and he was just full of ideas for converting India away from diesel and petrol. He says that in 5 years he wants to see no diesel cars in India. I don't know how realistic that is, but he's very committed. He says we have to switch to either LNG or CNG or green hydrogen, which is something that is being made out of pure water. So all of these things that people are talking about are very much the way forward, and I think we should, and certainly your generation should, embrace it and move forward, because I think the rest of the world is going that way. On the question of the education system, I have said this for now 20 years, so I'm afraid I've been preaching without very much success of conversion, that the biggest failing of our educational system is that we do not encourage enough creative thinking, and we do far too much to force children to mug things up by rote learning things by heart. Now, that's fine that every child should know some verses of a great poet or of Shakespeare or of Kalidas or whatever. There's some things that people should learn by heart, but if that becomes the main thrust of it, and very often marks and exams are given to the student who most faithfully regurgitates what he has mugged up from either the teacher's lectures or the textbook, and that there are no rewards for being original, creative, no rewards for not just asking the teacher why, but also asking why not. That would really be the doom of our system. So I have been arguing for a long time. The problem with our education system is that we produce well-filled minds. And actually in the 21st century, we don't need well-filled minds. We need well-formed minds. That is, you don't need a well-filled mind, because in the era of Google, you can find out anything you want with 2 clicks of a mouse, whether you've learned it by heart or not. So if you know that Shakespeare said something about the fault near Brutus is not in our stars, you just type Shakespeare, Brutus, stars, you'll find the correct quote, right? That's life today. You can't remember an exact date. You can't remember the exact GDP of India. You can't remember the exact cricket score. I've been sneaking looks at the cricket score while we've been talking, I'm sorry to say. And we're doing very well. England are 61 for 6, for anyone who cares. But anyway, the reason that we don't need a well-filled mind is because today's world, facts are always available. What is not available is what you do with those facts. How do you think? So we should teach our children not what to think, but how to think. Have them use their minds to embrace unfamiliar information, to see new facts and understand how to place them in context, to be able to analyze difficult situations that they've never come across before, and just find syntheses and answers. You know, there's a culture of examinations in our country. Maybe because we are so overpopulated, everything is competition. So, 10 lakh people are sitting in exam, only 100 can get in, therefore everyone is anxious to get 0.01% more than the other guy. But the problem is, if those examination marks are coming purely on the basis of the techniques needed to pass an examination, and not on the basis of any creative energy, you'll pass the exam and you get into college, you may not have a great and successful life, whereas possibly the guy who dropped out and didn't make it will be the fellow who goes on to invent the next big thing, or head the next big unicorn, as they call these billion-dollar companies. We've seen this around the world. That's the kind of world we're going in for today. And thinking out of the box, thinking beyond the textbook, thinking out of syllabus, these are all things that get rewarded in the real world of today. And so success will come to those who are able to think originally, and not just to those who can repeat what they've already been taught. That's the real answer. Thank you all very much. I think that was the last one. One more? Sure.
Thank you very much, sir,
Sure.
for being here amongst us.
So you have the last question, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before I ask my question, I would just say I agree with you totally on the educational policy.
Thank you.
Because even for subjects like languages, our primary questions are who said to whom, where we test the students' memory more than the language skills.
Right.
My question is more on the environment aspect. Of late, we've seen India's environment getting butchered in favor of revenue or revenue of a few business houses. Like Western Ghats in 2012 was a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. And we see that it's being chopped down relentlessly for double tracking, for transportation of coal and stuff like that. So can India as a country which is far away from being carbon negative, we have population as a problem, how does India as a country attain the goal towards, becoming environment friendly? So that would be my question.
Right. Well, that's a good question. There's no real easy answer, right? All I can say is that our government has committed us at the Paris conference, and since then, that we will do all this. They've got, for example, very ambitious targets for solar energy. They've even started an international solar alliance, and India is trying to advertise itself as a major player in solar energy. Now, we could get there, but right now we're way behind where we should be. Given how much sunshine we have, we should actually be a far bigger producer of solar energy, as well as a far bigger internationally influential player in this. But let's take the government at its word that they intend to do this. That's one step forward from the government side. From people, we need more awareness. And we need more awareness of how the environment actually affects us. And I've been an advocate of this for some time. Some people know this, I've written about this. 5 years ago, on my own initiative, I started a round table in Delhi on the question of air pollution. Way before all these headlines started coming about Diwali firecrackers, I had started this, partially because I myself am asthmatic, and I couldn't believe the foul air I was breathing every winter in Delhi, and partially because I thought air pollution was a problem that needed tackling on a serious footing. Initially, it was very difficult to get any buy-in from the politicians, particularly from the ruling party. But I persisted, did an annual roundtable, and finally I got some serious NGOs to partner with me. TERI, the Energy Research Institute, ORF, the Observer Research Foundation. And then the ministers started coming. So the former Environment Minister Javadekar came and spoke, inaugurated one of my roundtables. This year, Mr. Gadkari is coming. So the thinking very much is, how do we instill consciousness in the minds of people that this is in their interest to do? And that if you actually have a better environment, it's better for your health, better for your children. I mean, do you know that just bringing up a child in Delhi means sentencing that child to 10 years less of normal life? Whatever their normal life expectancy would have been had they grown up in Goa, it'll be 10 years less because they grew up in Delhi. That's how bad the air pollution is. That's going to affect their lungs, affect their long-term life expectancy. And this is the sort of thing that's utterly horrifying to realize. By the way, Calcutta is not much better. You go down the list of the 20 worst cities in the world for air pollution, 19 of them are in India. So it's a national problem. It's actually a crisis. But I have been speaking in Parliament about when is the government going to give us a national clean air policy that's actionable. Finally, they came up with a clean air policy, but it's all blah, blah, blah. And there's no specific target saying we will do this by such and such year, and this is how we'll do it. If a plan is not actionable, it's not a plan at all. I mean, that's my personal view. And so, partially because I have spent a fair amount of time within a world organization, the United Nations, where I was able to deliver results. I don't buy this Indian argument, we are like this only. You know, we may be like this only, but we can change also. And we can get things done. And there are bureaucrats who've got things done in different times in different places. We can tackle this on a war footing, we need to. The amount of toxic sludge in our water bodies. Rajiv Gandhi, I remember in 1984 talking about cleaning up the Ganga. Narendra Modi made practically the same speech 30 years later. And today, is the Ganga even this much cleaner, 1 little inch cleaner? So we have to ask ourselves, how can we destroy our sacred rivers? How can we destroy our non-sacred rivers with this deeply irresponsible attitude? They're sand mining in the riverbed. They are throwing garbage, sludge, chemicals, God knows what into the water. We're destroying our rivers. We're destroying our air. There's an old Tom Lehrer song which goes about the only 2 things of which you must beware: don't drink the water and don't breathe the air. We've reached that stage in India also. And I think we really now have to be serious about this. And that means the public has to be more aware, the public has to be more conscious, and the public must demand change. If the public buys in, it'll work. Now, I'll tell you why I know this can work. There are not too many people of my vintage here. Ramakantji probably will remember. Some of us grew up in an India where smoking was incredibly common. I mean, it was almost a fashion statement for a person, especially men, of course, in those days, to be lighting up everywhere at every opportunity. Movie stars were lighting up in movies. No one thought anything of it. When the world became aware of the dangers of tobacco and health, India did something very wise. We started teaching this in the schools, that tobacco causes cancer and so on. Children started coming home and throwing away their parents' cigarettes, saying, we don't want you to die of cancer, Daddy. And when the children bought into it, there's been a dramatic reduction in the number of people smoking. In the percentage of smoking was going up every year in the 1960s and early 70s. Every year. We had almost crossed 48, 49% of the population smoking. And if you looked at men, it was over 60% smoking. That's how widespread it was. Today it's down below 20%. And it has a lot to do with the fact that the message went to children, and the children learned it, and they came back and they influenced their parents' behavior. So if we can't cure the old people of their bad habits of throwing garbage into the water or letting the air be polluted, let's teach the children. If we can seriously instill environmental consciousness in Goa, in the children of the schools of Goa, I guarantee you'll have a perfectly clean environment for years to come, because they will ensure that they will stop their parents doing bad things, and as they grow up, it'll be internalized as something they want to do. Sorry for a very long answer, but that's... Thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure. Acha. Whenever I'm asked that question, I'll tell you what I say. I'll say there is only one word that I believe in that will help you improve your vocabulary as well as your mind. And that word is simply read. Everyone must read as much as possible. And the more you read, the better you will be with words. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Tharoor. And everyone, first of all, a big thank you for each one of your questions. Sir, a big thank you for each one of your insightful and deeply insightful answers. I'm sure these engagements everyone has a lot of takeaways tonight. Having said that, in between, while the question answer session was on, we were privileged to have join with us on the stage, the Secretary of AICC, Shri P.V. Mohanji is here on the stage with us. And we couldn't miss this opportunity to not hear him out for a couple of minutes. Inviting you, sir. Do shabd boliye, please. Sir, कुछ performance anxiety वाली बात नहीं है, कोई comparison नहीं होगा. Acha, but in the meanwhile, can I please request, So we have a very special gift for you, sir. It's Basant Panchami, and Dr. Pratiksha Khalap is presenting a set of saplings to Shri P.V. Rao, to P.V. Mohanji. And with this, it's time for us to wind up this lovely, enchanting, engaging evening. And I would like to invite the Secretary, GPCC, Mr. Sudhin Nayak, to deliver a quick vote of thanks. So we are taking just one picture with PCC and one photo with the block and no other pictures to be taken, please. Kindly keep that in mind, a special request.
Good evening, friends. As Sagalani Ulon Soplele asa, so I would like to conclude with some of my thoughts which I have in my mind. My name is Sudhin Naik. Most of you all know me, right? We all know, like Congress Janna Ami Anga, we have put this board, right? They itself says what Congress stands for, right? So Congress vision for Goa stands for sustainable growth. And same goes for Mapusa, right? BJP vision is destroying very foundation on which Goa has built its identity. And when I'm saying this, let me clear this more in detail. Goa has been known as Goa because of its beautiful beaches, because of its some mesmerizing hinterlands, because of its beautiful rivers, because of its Western Ghats. That is what Goa stands for, and that is what Goa is known for all over the world, and that's why people all over the world comes to Goa. However, what our counterpart BJP is doing, they are today promoting Goa as a coal hub. They just to support their corporate friends. They are destroying our forest cover and destroying all our wild animal by building highways, railways, bringing the power line just to feed those factories on which those coals going to be burned, right? And going to benefit only Modi's corporate friends. They are dragging our rivers to bring in bigger ships to transport the coal. This is what BJP has been doing in Goa, and that is what is going to destroy Goa's future. And I think we as a Goan should stand united to protect our sustainable growth and to ensure that Goa keep growing in a sustainable development goal-wise, right? The project which are not needed for Goa should not be going ahead, because what is the government should do? The government normally should stand, what does the law say? The government should be for the people, by the people, of the people. But what our ruling party is doing, they are going by government for the corporate, by the corporate, of the corporate. I don't think this can go on, and everything what this government is stand for is destroying Goa. So, and only one who can protect Goa is Congress party. Why Congress party? Because Congress has given Goa as a name by getting the freedom from Portuguese. Congress has given Goa its language, Konkani. Congress has given its state to Goa as a statehood, right? So everything what Goa has got is because of Congress. So I will request the people in this auditorium and the people of Goa to always remember this. And that's what going to be the major difference between Goa being ruled by Congress and what Goa going to be in future if it ruled by BJP. I would like to thank Dr. Shashi Tharoor ji for taking his time and coming and interacting with us with his intellectual thought, guiding us. I would also like to thank Dr. Sir Ramakant Khalab our former Law Minister of India. I'd like to thank our special dignitaries present here from AICC, Mohanji and Rathorji. I would also like to thank Jose Dias, our South District President, Vijay BK, our North District President, Mahila Congress, Pratiksha and her team, Shashank Narvekar, Block President and his team, Minority Department, IT Cell, Youth Congress, NUCI, my media friends, and not forgetting our anchor, Ruchika, for holding this event together, and also the person who has given the, and the AICC observers who are over here, and also for the Anantya, the management for giving this beautiful venue to us. Thank you very much for coming over here. And remember, Congress is the only solution for Goa. If we are going to vote any other party apart from Congress, means you are bringing BJP back to power, right? And BJP coming to power, then we already know what they have done. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Naik. We've already let you know that there would be only 2 group pictures. And
Full group.
yes, the full group.
The full group. I request everybody to take
All
a
of you
picture,
that are
full
here
group.
in the hall, please move ahead, move forward. We'll try and compose you all in one single shot. Everyone, your second word of the day is smile. Thank you, everyone. A big cheers to the audience here tonight.